Early Breakfast with Rosie Wright on Times Radio.
Here to go through the papers with us, Andrew Eborn, the barrister, broadcaster, president of Octopus TV. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. A delight to join you as always.
Front page of all the papers online, which has also happened before we, obviously everyone hit print. Julian Assange, currently we believe, on a plane, released from Belmarsh prison. It's quite a sort of a quite extraordinary development.
It's a fantastic news for people to be waking up to after so many years. Basically, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has left the UK. What he's done, he's agreed a US plea deal that will see him plead guilty to criminal charges, but then go free. And you'll recall, obviously, he was charged with conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence secrets. He spent the last 5 years in Belmarsh prison, living miserably from the images and the people that I've spoken to who know him very, very closely. Under the deal, he's going to spend no time in the US custody, and he's going to receive a credit for the time he spent incarcerated over here. The deal is going to be finalised in a court in Northern Mariana Islands on Wednesday, and he's expected to return to Australia, according to the US Justice Department.
You've said positive news. I think, Andrew, everyone is potentially has a muddled picture in their mind of Julian Assange.
Yes, and there has been, I've discussed this extensively on more platforms than Paddington, but Julian was a publisher, and this is the thing, he didn't steal any secrets, and just as, like most publishers, it's freedom of speech, but not necessarily freedom from consequences in certain situations. The reason it got everybody's blood boiling was obviously there were lots of lives at risk, but the sort of information that he disclosed were all sorts of things, were effectively murder and all sorts of terrible things that were happening. And just to put it in perspective, it was August 2010 that the Swedish prosecutor's office issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and one of molestation, which he said were without basis. He was arrested in London and bailed on the second attempt. He then sort of went to the Ecuadorian embassy, you remember, in June 2012. Many, many years ago. And there's been backwards and forwards as to whether he's going to be extradited to the US. He was basically sentenced to 50 weeks imprisonment in May 2019. And then there was all these discussions in the various courts as to whether or not he could be extradited. And the latest one was in May, the UK High Court rules that he can bring new extradition appeal because they didn't have the necessary safeguards. Well, he was granted bail and released from prison. And it seems as though I've seen pictures. It seems as though he was on that flight.
He's on a flight, yeah, for sure.
And I see the report from his wife as well.
Yeah, who's obviously elated. She's been campaigning for exactly that for 4 years.
Yes.
Let's talk about some international news, if we can. Donald Trump, Biden, they're going to be debating this week. We're going to be bringing it to you live here on Times Radio, which I'm looking forward to. The Times puts it this morning as a mute button will give Trump an opponent he can't shout down.
Yes, so you may remember the glorious debate that they had last time round, and Trump was very good because he will outspeak anybody. But what's happened, he's now lost his key debate weapon with the ruling that his microphone will be silenced when he has a little chat with Biden. And what Trump likes to do, because he's a master manipulator of all sorts of things, he likes to break his opponent's rhythm by interjecting aggressively. And you'll remember that he did this in the 2016 campaign with Hillary, and according to one of the consultants there.
It's so many interruptions. You can't really actually glean that much useful information.
Well, I think that's what he tries to do. He tries to say he's the more powerful man in this particular race. So what's going to happen? This 90-minute debate is going to be held on Thursday in Atlanta. CNN are going to broadcast. There will be no studio audience. But it's basically the first ever debate between a current and a former president. So it could be very interesting. Yeah,
in 2020, Biden ended up saying at one point to Trump, "Will you shut up, man?" I don't know how many people shared that view at the time, but there will be a mute button. It will be here live on Times Radio when the event happens. So hopefully there won't be too many interruptions.
Yes.
Can we talk about prisons, Andrew? Inside the Times, there's a story. We've talked about stretched prison population and the impact it's having on, things like everyday policing. At one point, police told, to only prioritise high-profile arrests because there literally hasn't been space. 10 guards a week have been quitting at high security jails. So it's not only an issue of prison spaces, recruitment is being so difficult. And for the people in the roles, they're saying, I can't hack this anymore.
Yeah, well, and it's actually not just the 10 guards quitting. There's about 1,000, almost 1,000 are disciplined for misconduct every single year. And what they had last year, 556 guards quit Category A prisons, which house the most dangerous criminals. And it's a crisis. They need to make sure that we have appropriate staff who can do these things. Prisons are already overcrowded. If you don't get staff to deal with it, then obviously it's a bit of a nightmare. But basically, there's also been a 30% jump in the number of jail officers who've been prosecuted for inappropriate relationships since 2017, again reaching a record high. 40 prison guards were disciplined for sexual harassment, up from 5 in 2014. And the number of guards disciplined for racial harassment has also increased. So there's all sorts of issues that need to be dealt with.
Euros tonight. And
yes.
I'm very excited, everyone. This programme knows I'm very excited. Really interesting story, because podcasts have sort of changed a lot of how we're consuming news coverage here at Times Radio and other broadcasters as well. The BBC are quite keen for sort of Gary Lineker and other pundits to be more honest while presenting the Euros coverage. I wonder, Gary Lineker has been very honest about sort of what he thinks of the players. Maybe not necessarily in the kindest of ways. How do they get the balance right of giving honest evaluation and feedback of what's going on the pitch, but, not demoralising, players?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And it's refreshing, if you like, to have a story about Gary Lineker, which is not telling him to be quiet. So, yes, this is encouraging him to speak out and be honest. So if he thinks they're rubbish and not as good as they should be, he's going to say so. And that's what he's going to do with his fellow pundits. He's basically being encouraged to present the team's coverage in the way that we might sort of shout at the television down the pub. So it'll be interesting. Let's see what the difference is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to be watching tonight?
I never miss an episode, the same way as I never miss an episode of your early breakfast show, Rosie.
You're probably the only person who calls a match an episode, truthfully. Now, I wonder, the campaign trail, you would assume, doesn't leave that much time to sit down and watch the television.
Yes.
However, the Radio Times have asked party leaders what their kind of favourite television programme would be. Some fairly surprising answers have cropped up. I'm looking inside the Times, and it's Romps and Reindeer leaders reveal what they're watching. We've learned that Sunak, then, is a fan of Bridgerton, which did surprise me.
Did it surprise you? I think it was actually driven by his wife. So, yes, this was a research which was done for Britain's favourite TV shows, a different angle on the politicians. We avoided Starmageddon, which would have been an obvious choice for a movie. But basically, he likes to sit down with his wife and watch Bridgestone, is what they said, and he enjoys that very much. But there's also been a number of other things. So Keir Starmer and John Swinney were not available to share their own choices, but they did previously say that Friday night dinner with his children is what Starmer said. Some of the humour is a bit close to the bone. They're only 13 and 15, and they're saying, "Did they just say that?" That's what he told one paper earlier. And so Ed Davey, he was basically saying that when he gets the chance to watch television, it's usually with his children. And his son was born with an undiagnosed neurological condition, which means he can't walk or talk. But he enjoys CBeebies and Justin Fletcher's Something Special and Mr. Tumble. So all good stuff there.
What do you think we really learn when we find out about this? For some reason, I can't really picture Rishi Sunak watching Bridgerton and having sort of like a cosy night in. You'd assume not much of that recently. Nigel Farage just said he's been watching Baby Reindeer.
Yes.
I mean, it is quite nice, though, finding out a little bit more about sort of the personality and the person behind the politician.
Oh, I absolutely. Baby Reindeer is fantastic. I've been talking about that, obviously, because the legal case is dominating the headlines. $175 million Netflix is currently being sued for. Very interesting case. No, I mean, you always wonder, don't you, if they really see it, or whether the PR people say, look, get down with the people. This will get you more votes if you say you like this. It's an interesting one, isn't it? So, but I do think this is what you have to do. It's about politics is about personalities. And if you basically engage with the personalities rather than their policies, it's an interesting way of doing things.
Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew Eborn, barrister, broadcaster, president of Octopus TV, going through the stories inside the papers with me today.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.